Titanic was the result of intense competition between rival shipping lines in the first half of the 20th century. Titanic and Olympic were built side by side in a specially constructed gantry that could accommodate their unpredicted size. The sister ships were largely designed by Thomas Andrews of Harland and Wolff. In addition to ornate decorations, the Titanic featured an immense first-class dining saloon, 4 elevators and a swimming pool. Its second-class accommodations were comparable to first-class features on other ships, and its third-class offerings, although modest, were still noted for their relative comfort as to safety elements. The Titanic had 16 compartments that included doors which could be closed from the bridge so that water could be contained in the event the hull was breached. The ship's builder claimed that 4 if the compartments could be flooded without endangering the liner's buoyancy. The system led many to claim that the Titanic was unsinkable. Titanic was launched on May 31, 1911. It then began the fitting out phase. As machinery was loaded into the ship and interior work began. After the Olympics' maiden voyage in June 1911, slight changes were made to the Titanic's design. In early April 1912, though, Titanic underwent its sea trials, after which the ship was declared seaworthy. The Titanic was one of the largest and most opulent ships in the world. It had a gross registered tonnage, that is the carrying capacity, of 46,328 tons, and when fully laden the ship displaced more than 52,000 tons. Titanic was approximately 882.5 feet, 269 meter, long and about 92.5 feet, 28.2 meters, wide at its widest point. On April 10, 1912, Titanic set sail on IRS maiden voyage traveling from England to New York City. The captain of Titanic was Edward John Smith, who was known as the millionaire's captain because of his popularity with wealthy passengers. Indeed, on aboard were a number of prominent people, including American businessman Benjamin Guggenheim, British journalist William Thomas Stead, Macy's department store co-owner Insider Strauss and his wife Ida Ismay, the owner, and Andrews the builder, were also traveling on the Titanic. The Titanic made its last scheduled stop in Europe, at Queenstown, Ireland. At approximately 1:30 p.m. the ship set sail for New York City. On board were some 2,200 people, about 1,300 of whom were passengers. Jack Phillips and Harlod Bride were the wireless radio operators on board the Titanic. Their job was to relay passengers' messages to the ship's bridge. The Mesaba and California warned of an ice field on April 14, but neither ship's message was relayed to the bridge. 2 lookouts, Frederick, who was a British sailor, crewman and a survivor of the sinking of the Titanic, fleet, was on duty along with fellow lookout Reginald Lee. When the ship struck the iceberg, they both were stationed in the crow's nest of the Titanic. Their task was made difficult by the fact that the ocean was unusually calm that night because there would be little water breaking at its base. An iceberg would be more difficult to spot. In addition, the crow's nest binoculars were missing. At approximately 11:40 p.m., about 740 kilometers south of Newfoundland, Canada, an iceberg was sighted, and the bridge was notified. Titanic was too close to the iceberg to avoid a collision with it. First Officer William Murdoch reversed the ship's engines to turn it hard a starboard. Most experts believe the ship would have survived if it had hit the iceberg head-on. Smith ordered Phillips to begin sending distress signals, one of which reached the Carpathia at approximately 12:20 a.m. on April 15, and the Cunard ship immediately headed toward the stricken liner. Cunard's Carpathia was some 107 kilometers away from the Titanic when it received distress signal. Other ships also responded, including Olympic, but all were too far away. The Californian was also in the vicinity, but its wireless had been turned off for the night. As attempts were made to contact nearby ships, the lifeboats began to be launched, with orders of women and children first. The crewmen worried that the derrick would not be able to support the weight of fully loaded boats. Therefore the lifeboat number 7, which was the first to leave the Titanic, held only about 27 people, despite it had space for 65. In the end, only 705 people would be rescued in lifeboats. As passengers waited to enter lifeboats, they were entertained by the Titanic's musicians, who initially played in first class before moving to the deck. The last song they performed likely either Autumn or Nearer My God to Thee. None of the musicians survived the sinking. By 1 a.m. water was seen at the base, deck, of the grand staircase. Amid the growing panic, several male passengers tried to board lifeboat number 14. Fifth Officer Harold Lowe fired his gun 3 times to repel the intruders. At that time Philip's words are as one noted that the ship cannot last much longer. Titanic's stern began to rise out of the water at around 2 a.m. on April 14, 1912. The only lifeboats that remained on the ship were 3 collapsible boats. Smith released the crew, saying it's every man for himself. He was reportedly last seen in the bridge, and his body was never found. At approximately 2:18 a.m. the lights on the Titanic went out. It then broke in two with the bow going underwater. Hundreds of passengers and crew went into the icy water. Fearful of being swamped, those in the lifeboats delayed returning to pick up survivors. By the time they rowed back, almost all the people in the water had died from exposure. In the end more than 1,500 people died. Aside from the crew, which had about 700 fatalities, third class suffered the greatest loss. Of approximately 710, only some 174 survived. The Carpathia arrived in the sea at approximately 3:30 a.m., more than an hour after the Titanic sank. Shortly before 9 a.m. the Carpathia headed for New York City, where it arrived to massive crowds on April 18. For more informative facts, subscribe our channel and don't forget to push the bell icon.